Hello, readers and writers. I am Anthony L. Manna, otherwise known as Professor Grandpa Tonio, the book guy and the writing guy, and I am the author of Loukas and the Game of Chance, illustrated with pen and ink pictures by Donald Babish. I am so happy to be here today to share with you my story, Loukas and the Game of Chance. For those of you who saw the other two episodes that I recorded sections from Loukas and the Game of Chance, you know then, you met Loukas, who at that point, early on, was a young flute-playing boy. He lives on an island with his mother and father. His father is a fisherman. His mother tends a small stall in the marketplace where she sells fish and herbs. And when you first meet the family, you know that they are very, very poor. It so happens that, again, if you watched the two episodes before the third one, this one, then you know that Loukas became friends with the dancing, talking snake named Lambros. And Lambros really, really loves Loukas' flute music. So every time he played the flute and Lambros danced, Lambros would leave behind, as he slithered away, he would leave behind 1, 2, and 3 gold coins. Well, this poor family became very wealthy in the meantime. So eventually what happens is, you also know, if you listened to the and watched the first two episodes, you know that Loukas grew up. He married Thera. Now they have 2 children, Petros and Sophie. And at this point in the story, Loukas is going to introduce Thera and Thera's mother and father and his own mother and father to Lambros the snake for the first time. So I'll start right there. And I hope you enjoy my story. It's such a pleasure to be here reading to you today. Some days passed before Loukas could lead Thera and their parents to the seawall, where they waited at Loukas' watch for the snake to appear. Once they settled in, Loukas played the seafaring ballad that over time had become one of Lambros' favorite songs. But this time, something was different. Loukas hastened the tempo, but even then, Lambros did not emerge from his shelter. Seconds later, Lambros and the others started searching the seawall for the snake's whereabouts. Coming to a gap, they struggled to set aside a pile of rocks that blocked all but a small section of the opening. Loukas and Thera used their hands to scoop away a mound of loose dirt from the opening. Once they pushed the dirt aside, they discovered a large pit. Peering into the pit, they saw Lambros coiled, lying lifeless on a stretch of rocky ground. When their calls to the snake failed to rouse him, they knew he was dead. Even in death, this snake is a beautiful creation, said Loukas' mother when Loukas and Thera laid Lambros' body on a grassy clearing near the seawall. A blessing from nature, Thera's father said as he passed over Lambros with the sign of the cross. To our family, a savior, Loukas' father said, nearly in tears. That evening, as daylight ebbed into dusk, Loukas gathered with Thera and the couple's parents to bury Lambros. With hearts heavy with grief, Loukas and Thera dug a grave close to the towering chestnut tree that grew a short distance from their cottage. The grave faced the sea, as Lambros had wished. Loukas honored Lambros's other request by shrouding the snake's body in fine white linen. He lowered Lambros into the grave and cast several sprigs of sage over the body. May this offering of sage protect our snake on his journey into the spirit world, Loukas said. After the grave was filled, Loukas, Thera, and the others raised their hands toward the heavens and sent Lambros's spirit off. They felt a deep sense of gratitude toward the snake for having freed them from a life of hardship. Beginning that day, Loukas and Thera lived a charmed life. In time, the couple brought into the world 2 children. First, a girl they named Sophie, and a year later, a boy they named Petros. By the time Sophie celebrated her 10th birthday, she had wavy blonde hair like her mother and dark green eyes like her father. Her warm, welcoming smile was comforting to folks, both young and old alike. "Like a dancer, she moves," villagers commented when they watched Sophie running through the village square with her school friends. At 9 years old, Petros was beginning to favor his father's solid, square build and thick, dark eyebrows. His curly hair was as black and wild as his father's, and his blue eyes were as bright as his mother's. Like his father, Petros learned to master the flute. Ever since he could hold the instrument, his mother's guidance had given him confidence, and his father's lessons had shown him how to play the instrument with great skill. From their parents, Sophie and Petros had learned to speak kindly of people. Better to say nothing at all about someone than speak ill of that person with cruel words, their mother often reminded them. "Cruel words make people suffer," their father would say. "Remember to hold your tongue and walk away from nasty gossip." As fate would have it, one stormy spring day, Loukas met up with his friends for a game of cards at a local seaside cafe. Joining the game was a crafty merchant. He was a hateful man who took great pleasure from spreading rumors about islanders he despised. The merchant was fond of telling his patrons that Loukas, their wealthiest neighbor, gained his riches from illegal trading off the island. As the card game wore on, Loukas and his friends kept losing their bids to the merchant's winning hands. "My luck is down," his friend Dmitri said upon showing his third losing hand to the merchant's straight flush. He bowed out of the game and left the cafe. "I haven't a chance of breaking even," said Nikos, Loukas' other friend. When the merchant won the pot with a royal flush, Nikos quit the game and walked out of the cafe without a word. Loukas stayed on. His rage mounted as he brought to mind the merchant's lies about trade deals that called into question his honesty. "Well, my man, I see you have more faith in your skill than those 2 cowards," the merchant said. He nodded toward the cafe door with a sly grin. My turn to deal," Loukas muttered. He glared at the merchant, his cheeks flushed, he was short of breath, and he was working up a sweat. The game soon heated to a fierce contest. I must defeat this scoundrel, Loukas thought. He has disgraced me and defaced my family's name. Play on, the merchant urged. The merchant stood. He brought his fist close to his face. He narrowed his eyes to stare at his opponent. The bets increased with higher stakes, and Loukas kept losing. Lucas's desire to turn the game to his favor blurred his thinking. He soon began gambling away the many riches Lambros's generosity had brought into his family. He lost his treasured cottage and the large tract of land on a hillside that opened to a view of the sea. He lost the goats. Next, the statue-laced fountains and lush gardens that surrounded the cottage went to the merchant. In the next round, all that remained of Lucas's treasures were his wife and children. He could see the madness in sacrificing his family to satisfy a hunger for defeating his rival. He could flee from the game if it meant saving his beloved Thera and their children. What should he do? What did he do? Loukas worked himself into such a frenzy over crushing the merchant that he lost the will to quit the game. When he laid down his next hand showing 2 pairs of aces over 10s, the merchant trumped him with 4 of a kind. Loukas had no choice but to hand over the lives he loved. Dazed, he forced himself from the table, nearly toppling it. Shame blazed through him. He navigated a clumsy about-face, grabbed his satchel, and staggered out of the cafe. The merchant's shrill laughter followed Loukas as he stumbled onto the rugged roadway that led from the harbor up into the forest highlands. Like a sleepwalker, Loukas trudged on. He was nearly bursting with anger over his recklessness. With his heart breaking from his losses, he came to an abrupt stop and raised his fists skyward. Before God, the saints, and the sacred spirits that rule the earth, I vow to free my family from the curse my madness has inflicted on us all, Loukas cried in anguish. At that very moment, he recalled a legend that told of islanders going in search of destiny to seek release from the suffering fate had handed them to test their will to survive. Like those islanders, he must gather his courage and go off to find destiny somewhere deep within the island forest where she lived with her son Ilion, the sun, and her daughter Luna, the moon. He would plead with destiny for the right to salvage his honor, his fortune, and please, 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 he begged, his enslaved family's freedom. Just as twilight began spreading its melancholy glow over the island, Loukas stood at a fork in the road. He was pondering which direction he should take. I will leave it there today and hope that I'll record another episode very soon, and I hope you'll come by and watch it. It would give me great pleasure. And someday I would love to hear you respond to the book, respond to the story, and tell me what you think. at www.anthony, Anthony, Manna, Manna, AnthonyMannaBooks.com. And thank you, and take care. Goodbye.